Have you ever been at work or school and you're just staring at the clock, waiting for those last 5 minutes for your shift or class to end? We've all been there, and it's miserable. Time just seems to proportionally slow down the more you're focused on it. But you know who doesn't have that problem? Our protagonist, Michael Afton. For whatever reason, whenever we're in control of this man, time seems to move at an insanely fast rate. Most nights in FNAF games are 6 minutes, with FNAF 2 having 7-minute nights and FNAF 1 having a night length of 8 minutes and 55 seconds. But what if instead of Michael Afton and his time skip abilities in that office, it was instead me or you, and we had to survive 6 whole real-life hours? Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Bones5 YouTube channel on YouTube. In today's video, I attempted one of the most mentally taxing challenges in the FNAF series, and that is, can you beat FNAF 1's 2020-2020 mode in real time? This means that we'll be playing 2020-2020 mode for 6 hours straight without dying. If that isn't one of the craziest challenges you've ever heard, I don't know what is. So if you end up enjoying this video, feel free to subscribe, but only if you enjoyed this video. With that said, let's get into our challenge rules. Before we get into this challenge as a whole, I want to give a huge shout out to sirfiftyfive for completing a challenge just like this one. We used different ratios for power of the night, but overall, the core theme of being in FNAF 1 for 6 hours was the same. We're going to be modding the original FNAF 1 to last 6 full real-time hours, with 1 hour in-game lasting 60 full minutes in real life. I know, shocker. But because we've made the night so much longer, we obviously can't use the game's base power system, as the amount of power we're given in a normal night is for a 9-minute night, not a 6-hour one. So we had to increase our power, but still keep the power at a fair rate. To do this, I first multiplied out 6 hours into minutes, which gives us 360 minutes total. Then, converting that into seconds gets us 21,600 seconds total. A normal FNAF 1 night is 8 minutes and 55 seconds, or 535 seconds. So, by dividing 21,600 by 535, we get a power multiplier of 40.37 times. Factoring in the increased amounts of attacks that we'll have from Bonnie and Chica, I decided to go with a 41 times multiplier, which means that we'd roughly have 4,100% of normal FNAF 1 power in this mod. This means that we'll still have roughly the same ratio of power as a normal night with an extended time frame. The power out sequence at the end of the night has also been adjusted by that same ratio. Aside from the power change, no main character AI changes have been made. Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, and Foxy are all as fast and dangerous as they've always been. However, we have made one change to Foxy. Typically, Foxy would drain power from your office every time that he hits the office door. This goes from 1% to 7% to then 11% every time he hits the door. Obviously, we don't want Foxy to drain 11% of our power on a hit. That means that he would take a full 444% of real FNAF 1 power on a hit. So, we've adjusted Foxy to only drain these values based on our power number of 4,100%, not the superpower you see in the game. We've also adjusted Foxy so that his power drain resets after 9 minutes and the night have passed. That way, he can't just hit the door for 11% over and over again, because that wouldn't be possible in the base game. With all of the changes and rules out of the way, let's get into where we should even start with this challenge. Starting off in the first hour, it starts to really set in what we're in for here. Playing 2020-20 mode for this long is the equivalent of beating the base game's 420 mode 41 times in a row. And I don't think I was quite ready for how brutal this was really gonna be. But before we get into the mental struggles that this challenge presented, let's talk about our actual strategy in the game for the night. 420 mode has had a lot of strategy evolution over the years, and we're going to want the most up-to-date and efficient strategy to carry us through these 6 hours. First, let's talk about Freddy and Foxy. To deal with Freddy, we're going to use something called cam stalling. This is a widespread mechanic across a lot of FNAF games, but for the purposes of this video, this is all you need to know. If we set our camera on camera 4B, Freddy cannot move into our office until we click off of that camera. If we do click off of that camera, the right door must be closed or else Freddy will enter and jump scare us. Though this poses an immediate problem. If our cameras are set on 4B, then how are we going to deal with Foxy? Well, Foxy actually doesn't care what camera you're on. It could be his camera, cam 4B, or the show stage, it really doesn't matter. As long as you're on the cameras, you'll activate Foxy's stall counter. From this, we've determined two things. First, we always want to be using the cameras as much as possible without wasting power. And 2, we always want to have our cameras set on camera 4B. Now, we just need to deal with Bonnie and Chica. Bonnie and Chica will approach from the left and right sides of the building. Once they arrive at the door, you'll have 4.97 seconds for Bonnie and 4.98 seconds for Chica to close that door before they enter and jam the door, jump scaring you on the next camera flip. So with all of these conditions that we need to satisfy, we can play using this loop. Pull up the cameras and set them on camera 4B. Then enter the loop of light check, camera flip, light check, camera flip. If you see Bonnie or Chica at the door, close it, then open it when they're gone. For a basic playthrough of 420 mode, this is all that you need to know, and this strategy will have you winning 420 mode fairly easily. But in our case, we need to make a few adjustments because of the absurd night length. First, let's talk about Foxy. Normally, we're flipping the cameras so fast in this strategy that Foxy never really has a chance to move. When we pull up the cameras, Foxy is stalled for a random number of frames. This value can be anywhere from 50 frames to 1049 frames. Though, like every other animatronic in the game, Foxy still has a traditional movement opportunity and interval system. His interval is 5.01 seconds. So if his stall counter happens to be active during this interval, he'll fail his movement. And this is why pulling the cameras up so frequently keeps Foxy at bay, as you have a really high chance of Foxy's stall counter being over all of his intervals. But this is still reliant on luck. Without an interval timer, it's impossible to always hit Foxy's intervals perfectly every time. And if you happen to roll a super low number for Foxy's stall time, he'll get a chance to progress, which on 20 AI he always will. In a normal game, this chance is super low, but in our game, he's usually going to progress roughly every 7 minutes with average luck. So we're going to need to frequently check Foxy to make sure he doesn't catch us off guard. Here's how you do that. Okay, let's break that down. We know that Freddy will enter the office once we click off of camera 4B, so the first step here is to close the right door. Once the right door is closed, we check the left light to see if Bonnie is there. Then pull up the cameras and click on Foxy's camera to look at what stage he's in. Then go back to cam 4B. Once you're back on cam 4B, it's safe to open the right door. This doesn't use too much power, and it'll allow us to always know what stage Foxy is in throughout the night. Depending on how far Foxy had progressed, I'd check him more or less often in the cycle. Let's call Foxy's 3 stages before he runs to the office stages 1, 2, and 3. If Foxy was in stage 1, I would just wait until Chica attacked the office. Then I would use that time where the right door had to be closed to look at Foxy's camera. If Foxy was in stage 2, I would again check whenever Chica came to the office, but I would also add a check every 2 minutes, as it's very important to know when Foxy enters stage 3. Once Foxy is in stage 3, you have one of 2 options. The first option is to continue stalling him until he leaves and runs to your door. In this case, you're going to want to be checking on Foxy every 20 seconds. Once Foxy leaves Pirate's Cove, a 1500 frame counter begins to count down. Once this counter reaches 0, Foxy will be at the door and will jump scare us if the door is open. This equates to 25 seconds in real time. So we always want to make sure that we can catch Foxy if he happens to move out. We're going to have to be checking on him every 20 seconds, assuming worst case luck. This can be very annoying and power consuming. Luckily, there is another option that we have, and that is to just force Foxy to the door. Instead of trying to stall Foxy when he's in stage 3, simply pull down the cameras and don't reopen them for about 15 seconds. Make sure the left door is closed during this process in case Foxy has already ran. Now, keep using the light on the right door, making sure to close it if Chica is there. Once the 15 seconds are up, make sure that you close the right door. Then, go off of Freddy's camera and click the West Hall camera. This will force Foxy to run down the hallway and hit your left door, in which you can then continue the strategy as normal. There are multiple pros and cons to each of these methods. If you're stalling Foxy in stage 3, it's more power efficient if you're super fast, but also requires more skill. And in a 6-hour run, we want to be using the least skill-intensive strategies possible. If you're forcing Foxy to hit the door, it'll drain more power, but it'll be a lot easier to pull off, and you'll have Foxy back in Pirate's Cove in a much more manageable stage. Regardless of how you play Foxy's attack stage, once he hits the door, he'll randomly start back in Pirate's Cove in either stage 1 or 2. We're really looking for him to start in stage 1 as much as possible, as a stage 1 start can extend a Foxy attack by 10 whole minutes in some cases. The last optimization to this strategy has to do with Bonnie and Chica. Normally, you'd alternate going between both lights in order to do a light check, camera flip loop. However, if we look at Bonnie and Chica's movement paths, we can actually play this a bit more efficiently. In order for Chica to move to the door, she always has to enter Cam 4B first. When Chica enters Cam 4B, the game doesn't have a sprite for both her and Freddy in Cam 4B, so the game will always choose to show Chica on the camera over Freddy, despite them both being there. This is what's known as sprite priority. This means that we can completely ignore the right door until we see Chica in camera 4B during our camera flips, and instead flip more frequently and just camp Bonnie's door, making this more efficient for both Foxy and our power usage. That about covers our strategy for the game, but unlike most other challenges, this challenge has another aspect to it, both the mental challenge and the physical challenge. When I got to about 30 minutes in this challenge, I started to realize what I had really gotten myself into, but I pushed on into the second hour of this challenge. Once I reached the 1 hour mark of this challenge, I got a real feeling of just dread. Remember that clock analogy from earlier, when you're looking at the clock in class or work and just feel that pure dread? I don't know about you guys, but when I was in those situations at school, I'd be thinking, I got 5 hours left. That's just 1 hour 5 times, 30 minutes 10 times, 15 minutes 20 times, and 5 minutes 60 times. And that's exactly what I was feeling right now. Realizing that I had only reached the 1/6 mark was really worrying. Another thing I haven't mentioned up to this point is the green running in this night. You see, multiplying the power by the exact ratio that we multiply the time doesn't exactly give the player a fair amount of power. Because you're playing for so much longer, Bonnie and Chica are going to attack way more, Foxy's going to attack way more, and overall, you're just going to have to use your doors more frequently than a normal game. Generally, I was looking to hit these power benchmarks at every hour, and I was directly on the edge going into 1 AM with 84%. Even though the existential dread was beginning to set in, I was still motivated to complete this challenge. This was my first attempt, and I figured that if I could beat this challenge in just one attempt, even though it felt like forever, it would take less overall time than almost all of my other challenges. 2 AM was when I realized another problem with this absurd night length. I was bored out of my mind. Unfortunately, I've been affected by the Gen Z STEM crisis. I've got TikTok,
oh yeah, Vector. Shut the fuck!
Instagram,
Ain't no way, bro. This is not your ID, bro.
and Discord, so you know that I've rotted my brain beyond belief with the short form content usage. I didn't plan ahead and didn't have any brain rot to consume while I was playing this challenge, so I really had to just raw dog this entire 6 hours. Usually, I'm hooked up to about 8 different dopamine sources throughout the entire day to prevent the chance of a thought occurring, but now I was forced to actually use my brain, and it was literally melting me. Hearing this same camera flip, door light, camera flip, door light, door close sound over and over and over again was starting to give me tunnel vision. It was like one of those FNAF Dream AI videos. What's worse is that it was literally only 2 AM. I feel like 2 AM in this challenge is like the Tuesday of the work week. If you're not up tweaking all weekend, usually you have enough energy that Monday isn't too bad. But then Tuesday is when the realization of how long the week actually is really sits in. TLDR, Tuesdays are worse than Mondays, and 2 AM is my Tuesday. The fact that I wasn't even halfway done yet didn't help either. When you have nothing to think about, you're just constantly rationalizing how much time it's going to take for you to finish this challenge. And when all you're thinking about is time, all you're looking at is the stopwatch, which is going to start making time move stupid slow. Eventually, I finally crossed the halfway point for this challenge, and it was time for 3 AM. In addition to my brain melting away, 3 AM was when I started to have some physical difficulties. I don't think humans are meant to move their mouse this fast for this long. Sure, I had attempted challenges for 6 hours at a time before, but during those challenges, I didn't need to stay focused the entire time, and I could take breaks between attempts. At this point in the run, my wrist, hand, back, index finger, and eyes were all starting to hurt. The killer here was having to double click the lights. In any click team game, whenever you click something, the game is always going to register a second click 10 frames from the first. However, you can't click the same pixel, as this will register as a double click, not 2 separate clicks. A good example of this is the custom night menu. If you just keep your cursor in the exact same spot, the AI will count up really slow no matter how fast you click. But if you move your mouse slightly, it'll count up really fast because it's registering all those clicks individually. This is why the lights in FNAF 1 and Rockstar Chica's sign in UCN can feel so inconsistent. So you have to click in a really specific way while also slightly moving your mouse in order to save optimal power when using the door lights. And we're doing this, let's see, roughly once every 1.5 seconds, 21,500 on 1.5. Yeah, 14,333 times probably isn't good for the index finger. Plus, I was so locked in this whole time that I was sitting up in my chair, so I didn't have any lower back support. So at this point, my back and neck were killing me. I figured I should also mention here that I didn't want to stream this challenge. One, because it would be a really boring stream to watch, like literally here, try and watch this full 15-second clip without going on your phone or skipping, I guarantee you can't. But also because reading chat would probably distract me. Sure, having something to think about would be nice, but if I ended up losing a 4 to 5 hour long run because of the excuse me donation sound, I would literally break every piece of equipment in my setup. But at least when going through 3 AM, you have the second wind kick in when you realize that you're finally over the hill and onto the second half of this challenge. At this point, I was on pace with 1% to spare, so power was looking good. If I could keep this power pace, I should be able to clutch this one out first attempt. Nothing to do but continue on. At 4 AM, I had pretty much stopped thinking. Call me Cars, because I literally could not imagine anything to distract me from this game. I don't know what it was about this hour, but it seemed to take longer than all the other ones. Maybe it was because I was so close to 5 AM, but it just dragged on and on. At this point, I didn't trust myself to do the Bonnie optimization anymore. My eyes were so dry from staring at the screen for so long, I was starting to have to force myself to blink more often, so I didn't want to risk missing Chica on the cameras ever. Plus, I had set this strategy firmly into my muscle memory and I could do it with my brain completely turned off, so it was working pretty well. Foxy was also camping super hard in stage 3 during this hour, so it didn't really help to make the night any more relaxed as time went on. Around the 4:30 mark, my knee started to bounce uncontrollably. Usually this would happen to me when I would get nervous near the end of a challenge. At the end of Rat and Catall challenges, rest in peace laser pointer by the way, gone but not forgotten, every muscle in my body was shaking, but I was really trying to control my nerves here. It's one thing to be nervous on the last 2 minutes of an 8-minute night, it's another thing to be nervous for a full hour and 30 minutes. I don't really have much else to say about these individual hours, but eventually, after what felt like literal years, it was finally time for 5 AM. On entering 5 AM, I was on pace with power. See, the reason that I was so scared about power was because of a really stupid mistake. Before starting this challenge, I never actually tested if the power out sequence buff worked. In theory, Freddy should wait for 41 times as long as normal, the same ratio as the power. But because I'd never tested if it was functional or not, I had this deep-rooted fear that the power out multiplier might not work, and Freddy could just do his normal blackout sequence, which here gives us literally no time at all per scale. So I needed to be on my perfect green run timing. At 5:05, Foxy entered stage 3, and combined with 5 AM nerves, this was super scary. Luckily, he didn't waste too much time. A problem across this entire run was my returning Foxy luck. Almost every time that Foxy had hit the door, he'd start back in stage 1, and this was no exception. Though, even with Foxy giving us less than favorable luck, I was actually feeling pretty good. My nerves had started to fizzle out after realizing that I had an entire hour left, and I was starting to move without even thinking. It was impossible for me to make a mistake. If I were to maintain the current cycle that I was in, I was unbeatable. I was fast enough to match everyone's kill timers with time to spare, and even if I had to stall stage 3 Foxy, it wasn't much of an issue. Down went 5:10, then 5:20, and then 5:30. 30 minutes left. I had felt like I had aged a whole 30 years over this challenge, but it was gonna be a one attempt and done. Free challenge. I was on pace with power. I had this in the bag. If I could just finish this out, I would never have to touch this horrible challenge ever again. Down went 5:40, not much longer, we're in the home stretch here. If I assume the power outage sequence worked, I could close both doors and win the entire game right now. Foxy had just entered stage 2. The way it was looking, I was going to have to endure one more Foxy attack in order to win the game. With 4% power left, I had to play this perfectly. By 5:43, Foxy was in stage 3. But if I stuck to my guns and kept stalling him, I'd have this down. Foxy managed to camp stage 3 for 5 whole minutes. At this point, I knew if I could get him to hit the door now, he would be likely to leave us alone for the rest of the run. I was going to force him to the door and finish this challenge. At this point, I knew if I could get him to hit the door now, he would be likely to leave us alone for the rest of the run. I was going to force him to the door, and I was going to finish this challenge. Do you know what enemy in video games has caused me the most pain in my YouTube career? If you've been around recently, you'd probably say Nightmare Foxy, or just Foxy honestly. This dude's a pain in the ass in like every iteration of FNAF. Or maybe Toy Bonnie, Rat Cat, Balloon Boy. If you're an OG, you might even say Gwyn from Dark Souls. But the answer is none of them. The animatronic to cause me the most pain out of all of them is Freddy Fazbear.
No! 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 Oh, no! What the f? No! No! What the f? What the f? What's that? No! What the f? Oh my god! Fuck! Fuck! No! No! Fuck! Fuck! No, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. No, no.
This was the hardest that I have ever been broken, probably in my entire life. I've been lying to you guys. This wasn't my first attempt. You see, we didn't exactly know how much power we should put into this mod. So originally, I was only playing with 40 times power, and I played around 3 hours of that version before realizing I couldn't win on that power pace. I then played for 1 hour on 2 more versions of power until we finally settled on the current 41 times, which this run was the first attempt on. If we were to factor in all of those different versions and breaks, I'd been playing FNAF 1 for around 12 hours at this point. I had been doing this monotonous loop for 12 fucking hours. See, this breakdown was worse than any rage or mental breakdown I've ever had before, even more than FNAF Lock. I thought that the rage in the FNAF Lock video would be my worst breakdown ever, but this topped it. In my opinion, this is the worst fail in Five Nights at Freddy's history, and I'll explain why by comparing it to some different challenges that I've done. I know this is an entirely different game, but bear with me here. Around Christmas time last year, I did one of my hardest gaming achievements ever, beating Dark Souls 1 without dying across the entire game at soul level 1. If you don't know what any of that means, don't worry, it'll make sense in a bit. The reason I picked this challenge for this comparison is because it's a really long challenge. My Dark Souls runs were usually clocking in at roughly 2 hours, so compared to any normal FNAF night, this was more endurance than anything. Throughout my Dark Souls runs, I had died at the final boss twice, and it was soul crushing. But the difference between this 6-hour challenge and any challenge before it was that I was learning. I'm gonna say it right now. This challenge from a gameplay standpoint is easy. I'm confident that any of you that are watching this that have beaten 420 could do this challenge. It just requires insane willpower to sit there and play it for the full 6 hours. It's not a test of skill, per se. So when I went into this challenge, I was just as good at FNAF 1 as I am right now recording this after the fact. Throughout this entire process, I didn't learn anything. Now, during my Dark Souls challenge, every death that I took, I was learning a new strategy and getting more consistent at each and every part of the game. But that wasn't happening here, and I was just sitting here, doing the same 2-second loop over and over and over again. There is no progression, there is no learning. You just win or you don't. The same can be said for any max mode or challenge that I've done. Even FNAF Lock, nothing could ever compare to the scale of this failure. In this run, I had never lured Foxy to the door a single time, so I didn't really know the proper way to go about it, as I had always just used the stalling method. So when I went to go and lure Foxy, after 5 hours and 50 minutes of this brain-rotting madness, I made a critical error. and forgot to shut the right door when going onto the West Hall camera, giving Freddy a chance to enter the office and jump scare me. I was literally broken down to my core, and all I wanted to do was never touch FNAF 1 ever again. This was the first time that I was just going to upload the video with the fail and say that I just really couldn't do it this time. I couldn't sit there and destroy my hand, my brain, my eyes at this computer for 6 hours straight. But it doesn't work like that. I've always prided myself on having an unbreakable spirit, ever since I was a child. My mother, she always told me that whenever I put my mind to something, I would always do it, period. The perfect run in Super Mario Galaxy 2, those of you who know, you know. Beating all of the temples in Donkey Kong Country Returns, doing a backflip on the ground. I had never faced a challenge that I couldn't overcome in my entire life. This challenge isn't a challenge of skill. We all know that. This is a challenge of willpower, the hardest challenge of willpower that I had ever faced. So, I slept for 4 hours and I got up to win. I knew that this time I could employ tactics to help my body last longer without getting sore. First, I got a bottle of eye drops at the ready and I would put them in every 30 minutes. I also made sure to sit back in my chair. That way I had back support and my lower back wouldn't ache. Normally, this is my chair. You see how one of the arms are removed? I do that for more mouse control, but with the cost of destroying my shoulder when I play for too long at a time. So I reattached the arm of my chair so my arm would last longer, as I could rest my elbow on the arm. Some of you may consider this cheating, and to be honest, I really couldn't care less. I started to use the pause feature that was built into Click Team. By pressing Ctrl P, you can pause any application. So, roughly every hour, I would pause, get up, put in my eye drops, stretch, and just make sure my body was good to go before I would continue. I also had a strategy upgrade with Foxy. In my first run, I would always stall Foxy, no matter what. But a much easier way to deal with Foxy would just be to let him go. See, Foxy's power drain when he hits the door will reset every 9 minutes. So if Foxy hasn't attacked in the past 9 minutes and he enters stage 3, I would just let him hit the door. If he had entered stage 3 before those 9 minutes, I would stall him until those 9 minutes were up. Then I'd let him hit the door. And for the final change, I have to talk about our heroes, Goblin and Wendigoon. I wasn't just gonna sit here and go insane listening to nothing but FNAF sounds. So I set up a playlist of storytime and audio videos that I could listen to. If you don't know who Goblin is, he's probably the most entertaining storytime YouTuber ever, with bangers such as I took fake perks, the ketamine rage, 40 Xanax bars, intense trip on airplane, and opiates at grandpa's house. And we all know our goat Wendigoon, explaining just all sorts of stuff to be honest. So I had these two running in the background to keep my sanity. With my body barely alive, off of 4 hours of sleep and a collective 12 straight hours of FNAF 1 420, I needed to power through, and I needed to finish this challenge. I thought that I was just going to release this video with the failure. I'm on a time crunch. I want to get this video out as soon as possible. But that isn't going to happen. My pride won't let me. I was going to show how, oh, I'm just a human too. No one is perfect. I can't do it because of being in too much emotional pain. Bullshit. How much do you know about yourself if you've never pushed yourself to the brink of defeat, to smash past any limits you've previously had? I don't fight to defeat anyone. I don't do these challenges to compete with anyone. I do these challenges to prove to myself that I can keep going, and that one day I can be the best possible version of myself. I was going to push my body and mind to its absolute limits. I wasn't going to give up. I knew that I had what it took. If nothing could beat me down before, this wouldn't be the one to do it. If you have a goal, if you have an idea of what you want to do, you need to put everything you have into it. Train for it. Remind yourself every day why you started. Most importantly, you try as hard as you can, and you never stop fighting. I could just close left door, but I don't fucking care. I know it's impossible for me to die if I don't hit cams, but I don't care. I'm closing both doors. I'm too scared. Well, I could probably stall him. As long as blackout is fixed, this is a win. And it should be. If not, I'm still counting it, because proportionally, I'm already past the worst luck for a blackout. There we go. 8 minutes left. That's a win. I gotta see it, though. I gotta see that beautiful 6 a.m. I need to see it. I'm just gonna talk about how I feel right now, because I know I won. My eyes are so dry. I need to sleep so bad. My eyes are really dry. My wrist really fucking hurts. Strangely, the part of my hand on my mouse pad didn't hurt, but my fingers are like dead. My knuckles are dead. Never do this. Never do this. This was the most, maybe not the hardest, one of the easiest actually, skill-wise, but the most painful challenge I've ever done, and it's not even close. That 550 fail was the largest mental breakdown I've probably ever had in my entire life. Yeah, never do this shit. Go for like a cool challenge, like any of the max mode challenges. Go for rat and cat. Go for pup master all challenges. Never do some bullshit like this. I do it because it'd be a cool video, I guess. But man, this was fucking horrible. I'm gonna have to like mega stim myself out. I'm gonna be like, have Discord on one monitor, YouTube on the other one, and then Subway Surfers and TikTok on the other one. I'm just gonna consume it all for like 3 hours straight. Okay. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's f***ing over. It's... This was the worst. Oh my god, yes, dude. Thank god. We glitched the frick. Oh. I don't know why that happened. That must be like a thing with the mod. But it's over. It's over. It's over. We're done. Before we get to the outro, I do have the proof for this challenge posted on the second channel, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I got really into character there with the Dragon Ball speech, so I hope you enjoyed it this time around. Unfortunately, I couldn't make a montage on my usual caliber because this challenge is literally a 2-second cycle repeated for 6 hours, but overall, this was a terrible experience. Never do this. I will post the game in the description if you really want to, but don't. If that 550 fail doesn't deserve a sub, I don't know what does. Please subscribe, it's free, blah blah blah. This percent of people don't, whatever. Anyway, have a great rest of your day or night. Thank you for watching. Peace.